Let's talk deodorant rashes under the arms. Deodorants and antiperspirants are two of the most commonly used products worldwide. Both men and women use them, and most people start using them around the time of puberty. Millions and millions of consumers of these products. Unfortunately, developing rashes to them is not out of the realm of possibility, and when this happens, it can be very uncomfortable, very frustrating, and hard to know where to go. In today's video, we're going to talk about what causes these rashes and how to go about healing them and getting rid of them. Now, most people just say deodorant, but we need to be a little nitpicky, a little nuanced, and clarify some terminology here, because when it comes to treating the skin, every little detail matters. There's deodorant and there's antiperspirant. Deodorants are used to mask odor. Antiperspirants are used to reduce sweat. Many products combine both types of products into one. Essentially, you will have an antiperspirant with a boatload of fragrance in it to deodorize. Deodorants work in one of two ways for the most part. They either contain an antimicrobial ingredient to reduce the burden of bacteria under the arm that produces odorific compounds, or they contain fragrances to mask odor. Antiperspirants work because they contain aluminum salts, which plug up the sweat gland, ultimately reducing the output of sweat, making you produce less sweat. This is helpful because the bacteria that normally live under your arms, they break down that sweat, and that is what leads to odor. What about the crystal deodorants? These are often marketed as a more natural alternative. They contain zeolite minerals such as potassium alum or ammonium alum, and they claim to help tackle body odor because they claim that the minerals help to get rid of bacteria under the arm that would otherwise make you stink. There's not good research to support these claims, but a lot of people anecdotally report that they do help in cutting down on odor. That being said, just like the traditional deodorants and antiperspirants, you certainly can develop a rash to these as well. When rashes under the arms happen as a result of using these products, they can be very uncomfortable. Why do people develop rashes so readily to these types of products under the arm? Well, take into account the nature of the skin under the arms. It's delicate, you have friction, you have occlusion, and you have sweat. All of these things enhance irritancy, and they enhance the likelihood that you develop an allergy to something in whatever it is that you are putting under your arms. These rashes are essentially a contact dermatitis. Contact dermatitis falls into two main categories: allergic contact dermatitis and irritant contact dermatitis. Allergic contact dermatitis involves your immune system mounting a response against a given ingredient. It essentially one day decides it no longer likes that ingredient, and you are essentially allergic to it, such that anytime you come in contact with that ingredient, you'll develop a rash wherever you have applied it. Irritant contact dermatitis, on the other hand, is not an allergy. It doesn't involve your immune system mounting an allergic response against an ingredient, really to the product formulation overall, not necessarily to a specific ingredient per se. And a lot of the reasons behind developing an irritant contact dermatitis have to do with the nature of the product you're using, as well as the location it is being used and the overall concentration that you're using it. And all of the factors that I pointed out about underarm skin make it an area a lot more vulnerable to irritant contact dermatitis. And frankly, it can be a bit difficult to tease out the two types sometimes. Let's talk allergic contact dermatitis. The number one allergen in deodorants and antiperspirants is going to be fragrance. In fact, underarm dermatitis is overrepresented in people who are allergic to fragrance. Having a history of an underarm dermatitis secondary to using a scented deodorant increases the likelihood that you have a fragrance allergy by a factor of about 2.4. When it comes to fragrance allergy, it gets complicated. Fragrance involves over 3,000 different compounds and different mixtures. Any given product can have fragrance of a different constitution. It may contain 10 different compounds, 20 different compounds, or 100 different compounds. Fragrance is a trademark secret, so not every single compound in a given fragrance in a product, such as your scented deodorant, is going to be listed. If you develop a fragrance allergy, it becomes very tricky to figure out what exactly it is in those fragrances that is problematic for you. The most frequent fragrance allergens in deodorants include geraniol, eugenol, and hydroxycitranolol. Outside of fragrance, the next likely culprit is something called propylene glycol. Now, this is a bit tricky. Propylene glycol acts as a preservative, a moisturizing ingredient, a penetration enhancer. You can become allergic to it, but it also can be irritating. Sometimes it can be hard to tease out whether or not you are allergic to it or irritated by it. Then you have essential oils, frequently used in, quote, natural deodorants. Essential oils contain hundreds of different compounds of varying proportions. Essential oils are used as fragrances, and they also may be used for their antimicrobial properties, such as tea tree oil. Many of the same compounds found in fragrance mixes can also be found in essential oils, such as citranolol and eugenol and geraniol. Many people develop allergies to these, and they actually have a fragrance allergy because they have become sensitized to a fragrance compound in one of the essential oils. Basil oil, ylang ylang, lavender oil are further examples of essential oils you might encounter in deodorants. Other less common ingredients to develop an allergy to would be certain preservatives, vitamin E, and lanolin. Lanolin allergy does happen, but it's not as common as it was once thought to be. Check out my video all about lanolin allergy. I go into the nuance of it there. Then there's irritant contact dermatitis. Things just are irritating to the underarm skin, ingredients, overall formulation. Common irritants that you might encounter in deodorants and antiperspirants include alpha hydroxy acids. A lot of deodorants these days are using alpha hydroxy acids. You'll especially encounter this in some of the whole body deodorants. Alpha hydroxy acids are great. They're moisturizing, they're hydrating. Including them in deodorant is not really super evidence-based, but the thought process there is that they help to normalize skin pH and help support a healthier skin microbiome, cutting down on odor-causing bacteria, but they can be irritating, especially under the arms. And a lot of people try and DIY their own deodorant by using glycolic acid face toners under the arms, and I caution against doing that because of the risk of irritant contact dermatitis. Some natural deodorants also use baking soda, which is caustic and very irritating under the arms. You can be irritated by the aluminum salts and antiperspirants. You can develop little bumps as a result, and you can become irritated by the zeolite minerals in those crystal deodorants. So what do you do if you develop an underarm rash related to deodorant or antiperspirant? Well, stop using it. That's essential. You have to stop using these. I suggest stopping using all products to this area until at least the rash is healed. I also strongly suggest seeing a board-certified dermatologist. This is important for several reasons. First and foremost, to confirm that what you have is a rash due to the products that you have used under the arms, a contact dermatitis. There are other rashes that can develop under the arms that look like this but are not it. For example, certain skin infections under the arms, as well as perhaps allergies and irritations due to, say, your clothing even. So seeing a dermatologist to confirm what it is that you are dealing with. If you do have a contact dermatitis, then the question becomes, is this allergic or irritant contact dermatitis? And if it's allergic contact dermatitis, what are you allergic to? Dermatologists likely would recommend that you undergo something called patch testing. This is really important because it helps to determine what ingredient you are allergic to so that you can avoid it moving forward. Without patch testing, without knowing what you're allergic to, it becomes very difficult to navigate the skincare world moving forward, because if you have an allergy, you need to know what you're allergic to because you'll encounter it in other products. For example, if you are allergic to lanolin and then you try and use Aquaphor healing ointment on your underarm rash, that's going to make it worse. Aquaphor healing ointment also has lanolin. Natural deodorants are just as problematic as, quote, non-natural deodorants. And as a side note, natural is not a regulated term. If you're allergic to fragrance, you're going to develop a rash to natural deodorants that have fragrance, and most of them do. Probably the safest thing to use under the arms to help calm, soothe, and heal the rash, especially if you can't get in to see a dermatologist and you're just struggling, is going to be plain petroleum jelly, Vaseline. Plain petroleum jelly does not cause allergic contact dermatitis. It helps heal dermatitis rashes by essentially acting as a skin protectant, second skin, promoting healing and recovery. When it comes to choosing a deodorant or an antiperspirant moving forward, I would suggest choosing one that is free of fragrance, especially if it's been confirmed that you're allergic to fragrance. You're going to have to avoid it. That's tricky. Go down the antiperspirant deodorant aisles. Thousands and thousands of options. Very few of them are fragrance-free. I'll recommend some, but they're hard to find in like the drugstore and Walmart. Read ingredients very carefully. Don't just buy a product that's labeled unscented. Unscented products often have masking fragrance, which is fragrance intended to mask the odor of the product. But if you're allergic to fragrance, you likely can be allergic to the compounds in masking fragrance used in unscented products. Some products are labeled unscented and they don't have masking fragrance. That's why it's important to read the ingredients. If you're allergic to fragrance, a fragrance-free antiperspirant I frequently recommend is by Almay. It's one of the only ones you can consistently find Walmart or your drugstores. Vanity Cream also makes a fragrance-free antiperspirant. I frequently recommend the Certain Dry fragrance-free antiperspirant, but I've had a lot of people tell me that that product burns and stings under their arms. It's great for cutting down on sweat. It really works, but I've had a lot of people tell me it causes them irritation. So that one might be too irritating, especially if your underarm area is sensitive. And a final note about the use of antiperspirants. If you are someone who uses antiperspirants, you want to cut down on sweat. Here's a little insider secret that a lot of people don't know, and when they hear they're not even really willing to accept. You actually don't need to use antiperspirant every single day in order for it to work. Trust me on this one. So you can put on antiperspirant and allow it to get into the sweat gland. And once it's done that and blocked the sweat glands, there's not really a need to continue applying it night after night after night. You do need to use it a couple of times a week. You should use it 1 to 2 times a week in order to sustain the sweat reducing outcome, but you don't need to apply it every night. Apply it at night. That's another pro tip. Apply it at night. That way it allows the aluminum salts to get down below the surface of the skin to plug up the sweat gland. It has a better chance of getting into the sweat gland at night while you're asleep than during the day. So put it on at night before you go to bed. The following morning, you can actually take a damp washcloth and wipe off any remaining antiperspirant residue on the skin surface, because at that point, it should already be down in the sweat gland. Anything on the skin surface is not serving you. That being said, you might want the deodorizing aspect, the fragrance, to mask odor, but in this case, if you're dealing with underarm dermatitis, keep it as simple as possible and cut out background noise. Try wiping it off following morning. Or if you take a shower, get your underarm good and wet to rinse off the residue off the skin surface. All right, guys, those are my tips and tricks with regards to deodorant rashes. I really hope this video was helpful to you guys. I know it's a very uncomfortable thing to deal with. If you enjoyed it, give it a thumbs up, share it with your friends, and as always, don't forget, sunscreen and subscribe. I'll talk to you guys tomorrow. Bye.